So this was a video that got recommended way back on my YouTube feed, and it was the 10 overhyped games that died the fastest. And I will say there were some games that did die the fastest, but um, one that I could truly remember is just Marvel's Avengers. And I remember that I played the game. Was like the story was okay, but then like the hype for it was so much that when the game came and I played the whole thing, like it literally felt so dry after that. So let's see what are the 10 overhyped games that died the fastest. Let's see.
A lot of games have a lot of talk and hype behind them, and then they launch and they fizzle out really quickly. We've got 10 game examples across a variety of different genres to talk about, so let's get started off with number 10. We're starting off with an obvious one, but it's one that people often forget. It's Evolve. Evolve is from Turtle Rock Studios, and this is a big deal because they were the developers of Left 4 Dead. So, switching gears from Valve and Steam to big mainstream publisher 2K, the launch to Evolve made it seem like it was going to be the next big thing. Obviously, people love Left 4 Dead, and that kind of kicked off a lot of fun multiplayer stuff, and Evolve seemed like it was going to be a bigger budget, more emphasis on asymmetrical multiplayer with one player playing as a monster while the other players are hunting down that monster. It seemed like a good idea, but this was also at a time, the early days of games as a service and microtransaction stuff, when that stuff was arguably at its worst. Evolve finally launched in 2015, and it got some good reviews, and it seems like people liked it, but it seemed to fizzle out very quickly. Despite the game touted by the developers to have, and I quote, the best support for downloadable content ever, just kind of seemed like a lot of typical, not very memorable stuff. DLC maps, season passes, new hunters and monsters, a ton of skin packs. Actually, 44 different paid DLC skin packs at launch.
Yeah, like that's what sucks now, obviously with gaming, because like one of a perfect example that's going through this is obviously Mortal Kombat, and I wanted to talk about it so long, but I guess now it's like a good time to talk about it since obviously it's. I would say it's a hype game, but like it wasn't really overly hype. But what's it called? When it came that like the next Mortal Kombat was gonna be Mortal Kombat 1, like we're going back in time. I was like, holy crap! I was so excited to check it out. And then the day came, the game dropped, and obviously I was so excited. I played the story. I loved the whole story mode and how it went. And then I played the invasion modes and I finished it. And then after that, it started to go in a very dry mode. Like, sorry for all the ones that like have like all the benefits from WB and everything else, but obviously since I'm not one of them, and I'm assuming I'm not gonna be one of them like later on, because I'm talking about this, and obviously content creator by the name of Dynasty has talked about like how it sucks, like how we're literally paying $10 for a skin or $12 for fatalities, and I do understand that, but like it goes with the aspect of there are some people that were willing to pay for it. I'm one of them. I'm sorry that I'm one of them, but obviously I want to check out like the content that they give us. But yeah, like when it comes to like stuff, like it is going in that same route. Like we are paying for basically DLC packs of skins during the launch time, and obviously like there's not much to do. Like obviously with the towers, like it's all different and jumbled. I don't like the whole aspect of how it is. Invasions mode is good, but I just wish we had like a whole mode that we could just play just pure test your might or the survive or any other modes. But I don't know, they're saying that they're gonna put a lot of good stuff in the following year to come, so I'll give it that stance. But Mortal Kombat just has not been hitting too well.
That stuff felt kind of gross. But even amidst all that, in the early days, the developers, 2K, were looking at this like the next big thing. Possibly becoming a pop culture phenomenon, translating over to like, TVs or movies, also getting big into esports. And despite some early promising showings, it seems like I said, Evolve kind of fizzled out. Maybe it was the progression system not being so great, I don't know, because technically, beneath all of that, there was a cool game, a pretty cool realized world, some good visuals, but it eventually transitioned to free-to-play in 2016, and then by the end of 2016, the developers announced that they were going to be winding down support for Evolve, and further plans for like a Evolve 2.0, or it was called Evolve Stage 2, was not going to be released on consoles. No. Then by 2018, the game's dedicated servers were shut down, and we haven't really heard too much from Evolve since. People playing it in server stuff had popped up a little bit here and there, but as of summer 2023, the game is entirely taken down. So that was that. There was no big crazy future for Evolve. It just kind of unfortunately came and went. Next, over at number 9, let's talk Battleborn. This was a free-to-play, first-person competitive shooter that was centered in arenas, and it was character-based stuff. And unfortunately, it released around the same time as Overwatch, and Battleborn kind of ended up falling to the wayside. Battleborn, of course, was pretty different from Overwatch. It had some weird, quirky, but kind of cool character designs, and some creative ideas here and there, but ultimately, it didn't land with us. It didn't really seem to land with too many other players, and that's unfortunate for Gearbox, because they were hoping it would be the next big thing. But in 2014, we remember leading up to the game's release, head of Gearbox, Randy Pitchford, tweeted, and I quote, "Battleborn is first-person shooter, hobby-grade co-op campaign, genre-blended, multi-mode, competitive esports, meta-growth, choice plus epic Battleborn heroes." Dude, what does that mean? That sounds like a pile of corporate buzzwords, basically video game words that only get shareholders excited. And it tells me nothing about the game. And that seemingly muddled mixed messaging there translated over to the marketing of the game, because it certainly didn't pop off at launch.
Put some gameplay,
decent
talking
reviews.
about those
it did
points.
hit sales charts, but like I implied at the start, Overwatch released within just a few weeks of Battleborn, and just like a month after release, the concurrent players dropped to like 100. They tried things, they added more content, more modes, they added a sort of free trial, free-to-play-ish mode, but it definitely didn't reach the heights that seemingly Gearbox was hoping. That's alright, Gearbox. At least we still got Borderlands. But next, over at number 8, we have Marvel's Avengers.
Oh, here it is.
Now, this one didn't die super quick. It actually hung on for a while. And it did find...
And it obviously hung for a while because we were promised to play, or we were promised a Spider-Man DLC if we had the PlayStation exclusive. That's why, like, I wanted to get the game so badly, because I would be like, bro, I get to use all the Avengers and Spider-Man. Like, how freaking awesome is that? But then I, like, going with the stances of how I felt about Spider-Man, and I thought it was going to go in the same route. But no, it went a different route. And let's see what it says.
An audience, to be fair, and when we played it, we really actually kind of liked the single player campaign, at least for what it was. But this game was designed to be a kind of endlessly replayable Marvel Avengers superhero games as a service game. They wanted you buying skins, buying expansion packs, jumping in to play events, and engaging with your friends online all endlessly as your favorite, you know, Captain America or Iron Man or what have you. Well, I think a lot of people would just kind of want a Marvel's Avengers cool single-player experience and not a cynical multiplayer thing. The game did find an audience. Despite that, it was the subject of so much ridicule online in the hardcore gaming crowd. Its post-launch stuff didn't always make the best decisions. And after release, players kind of dropped up and down as there were bugs, rough issues, and then some interesting expansions when character additions like Spider-Man or Black Panther would bring people back here and there. But it was a hard walk to the finish line, or really the end of the roadmap, because so quickly after launch, the player count dropped substantially. Well, like we keep saying, we know some GameRanks viewers out there continue to play the game consistently with all the updates and free stuff. They have paid XP boosts and stuff that just pissed off a lot of other players, and ultimately, it just seems like it didn't need to be a live service multiplayer game. This could have been a compelling, regular, straightforward experience. And that's saying something, because this was a Marvel's Avengers game released in 2020 when everybody was shut inside. This game should have ended up the biggest thing in the world. But ultimately, the delays, the mixed messaging, and the actual service model of the game itself, the design, served as a roadblock to this thing actually becoming the next big awesome superhero game. It got next generation updates, a lot of stuff ended up being free, but ultimately, after about 2.5 years, the developers announced that they weren't supporting it with new content or features in September 2023. At least they gave away all the cool stuff for free at the end, but still, that was it. Next, over at number 7, we have Aliens Colonial Marines. This game just had a lot of excitement around it because it seemed like the Aliens game that a lot of people were wanting. Something that embraced...
Oh, like, obviously it's one of those games that, like, was promised so much, like, oh, like, it's gonna look so amazing and all that. But when it, like, I didn't know, like, that's what happened, like, with the whole stance of, like, Marvel's Avengers. So, are you saying that if I go back to it, like, I'll be able to get all the free stuff that I would, like, want to get? Like, what's it called? Free skins, free stuff like that. Maybe free DLC. I don't know. Like, I still have the game. I just I haven't touched it since way back. Cause, like I'm saying, like I played the story mode, and then after that, it just died off, and I didn't get to play Spider-Man. I didn't get to play all the other DLC characters that were promised. But I don't know. It's just that game. It's just boring.
James Cameron's awesome sci-fi action film. You're playing as badass Marines with cool weapons, blasting away at aliens, acid blood is flying, and the trailers seemed pretty awesome. It seemed to be what we wanted. Gearbox was like, hell yeah, we're giving you guys what you want. And then it launched, and it was nothing at all like advertised. This game fell onto huge controversy for just being not good at all. The first person shooting, the way the aliens attack, the visuals of the game. Nothing looked
it looks like a
what
simple
it seemed like they were intended.
Call of Duty
Nothing really
zombies
looked
game.
like how it had pre-release.
And
people
here,
were getting hyped up about a new Aliens game, and
awesome.
What released absolutely sucked. And while it could have been an incredible game that stuck around for a while, like, say, Alien Isolation, which people still talk about to this day, no, Aliens Colonial Marines released. A bunch of people online got mad at it, and then ultimately moved on. And it was just a fart in the wind in video game history. And at this point,
they're not
honestly,
attacking,
we feel like we're the only people
jumping
still
at you. They're like,
about
hey,
it.
what's up? They're just
Next,
like
over
that.
at number 6, we have Haze. This was a game from 2008 that was from the developers Free Radical Design. Now, you may not remember that name, but they're some of the people behind Time Splitters. So they know how to make first-person shooters.
Games at all.
And people were really excited about this one because it just looked cool. The marketing was flashy, the guy on the cover was badass, and a lot of people were dubbing this PlayStation's answer to Halo. This was going to be PlayStation 3's Halo. Their fun, awesome, unique sci-fi first-person shooter. It was going to have this big, deep, compelling plot in the future about these people addicted to the substance where it controls the mind of soldiers.
Halo.
Korn even wrote a song for the game, and it released, and it was not so great. It got some pretty middling to bad reviews from both the media and players, who were all gladly jumping into that whole, is this the Halo killer kind of debate, and ultimately it turned out it was not at all. The campaign was the multiplayer modes were just not very exciting, and ultimately
so it was just dull.
Came and went.
You're just like going around,
it
just
felt
walking
very
around,
much like the lead up
and
the
just
previews,
shooting some guys,
the trailers, the magazine,
that's it.
Exposés and breakdowns. All of that lasted way longer than the game actually did after launch.
Now,
next, over at number 5, do you remember Fast and Furious Crossroads? Yeah, most people don't. The funny...
Didn't this, like, become, like, a whole mobile game, and it was gonna look amazing because it had, like, Dom, like, looking all clean and saying that you could play as Dom and you could have family. I don't know.
The thing about this one was that it was actually announced during the Game Awards in 2019. Towards the end of the show, Vin Diesel himself came out with Michelle Rodriguez. I mean, we're talking Dominic Toretto and Letty out on stage. And Vin Diesel said, hey, we got a new game coming out. It's a Fast and the Furious game. It's going to be awesome. And that was it. People were like, what the hell? Oh, cool. Then, complete radio silence. We didn't hear anything about this game. It was quietly delayed during the pandemic. Eventually, it finally released in the summer of 2020, and nobody noticed. I mean, we noticed. We put out a video on the game and reviewed it. It was just kind of this weird, goofy, junky arcade racer that, had a little bit of charm to some of its racing and crashing action, but the whole Fast and the Furious presentation was half-assed and fun.
Well, when it comes to, like, a racing game, you have to, like, make it gimmick-wise, because obviously we have the Need for Speed, we have the Forza Horizon ones, and they all seem very generic. Like if we're talking about games that were like fun, I'll give the example of Need for Speed Hot Pursuit. I remember playing that game. It was a normal racing game, but the gimmick was that you had cops following you, and also like to the point that if you went to like a certain star level, there would be cops with helicopters that would be throwing barrels of bombs or explosives that were literal barrel shape, and if you were to touch one of them, they would literally blow up your car, and then that's it. You're out of the race. Give it like that type of gimmick when it comes to like a whole Fast and the Furious or just a racing game to make it your own. Because if you do just racing, it just becomes a same generic racing game, and then it just gets swept under the rug. It's the same thing with the FIFA games. Like, give it a gimmick, make it fun. Don't just be like, oh, it's just soccer. Like, make it soccer, but add something with it that makes it your own game.
Phoned in, literally. It sounds like some of the characters voice their
There's one I got that's called
cell
Captain
phone.
Tsubasa, and I'm gonna try to play it. And if I find that it's way more fun
And
than
it's a
FIFA,
shame, because frankly,
that
the
is
Fast and the
disappointing.
Furious franchise deserves so much more. I mean, the movies at this point are practically video games, so you think that check would write itself. But nope, this Bandai Namco published Fast and the Furious game was very quickly forgotten.
Oh my gosh. Oh man.
Now, down over at number 4, we have The Culling, or
The
really,
Culling.
The Culling 2. The original Culling was a first-person battle royale game.
What is
and
this?
people really seemed to enjoy it. It wasn't like 100 players drop onto an island like a Fortnite or a PUBG. This was
would be a
initially
fun one.
16 players in an arena, and it had some quirks to it that people really seemed to enjoy. But unfortunately, then PUBG released and the player base kind of dropped. There were plans for The Culling 2, and this was going to be the comeback for the series. It was going to be bigger and better and be able to seemingly compete with something like PUBG. It was going to be a fresh take. It was just going to be released completely, not like an early access thing. And when it
This
finally
looks like
released in
Fortnite as
2018,
well. Oh my
it was a mess.
gosh.
It was totally rough. It feels unfinished to the point where just 8 days after launch, they pulled the game from storefronts. They gave everybody refunds, they shut the servers down, and that was it. It's like they completely just shut it down and ran. They tried little comebacks, but really that was it for The Culling. That was a huge conversation for like a week or so. The
Yikes.
Culling 2 is coming. Let's see how that is. The Culling 2 is out. Oh god, what is happening? And then a couple of days later, wait, where is The Culling 2? That felt like a flash in the pan if I ever saw one. Next, down at number 3, we have APB, or All Points Bulletin. This was developed by Real Time Worlds, and this is significant because they were the developers behind Crackdown. APB was kind of dubbed by a lot of people to be a Grand Theft Auto online style game before that was really a thing. Kind of a Grand Theft Auto style MMO where players were free to run around a city, cause chaos, steal cars, do crime, yada yada yada. So there was a ton of potential.
Damn. Does the car blow up?
The development went on for quite some time, had a lot of press, it had betas, it had an exciting community, but unfortunately it didn't get great reviews, and a lot of people found it to be a little messy and unfinished. Unfortunately, the developers Real Time World at the time were going through some pretty bad financial problems, and pretty quickly after the game's release, they went bankrupt and APB was sold off to a different company, who eventually, like a year or so later,
That also
re-released
sucks,
it,
that when your
updated
game
as a
also
free-to-play game called APB
very expensive
Reloaded.
to
It took a minute for
pay
this one to die. I'm not gonna lie, I say that out of
you have to
personal
sell it to
experience.
another
I had a
company? That
couple of friends
sucks.
that played APB, but ultimately a lot of people were thinking this would be the next big thing, and unfortunately it just wasn't. And now in 2023, it's dead. Now, next down at number 2, we have Crossfire
Like, it's
X.
just dead.
Crossfire X was announced as an Xbox title, and it was an interesting move specifically because they were bringing over a competitive first-person shooter that was beloved in Korea and other
Almost like a
Asian
Call of Duty
territories,
game,
and
basically.
kind of repackaged that for Western audiences as a new competitive first-person shooter. The problem is that there's so many out there that Crossfire really had to stand out. It seemed like it could have been a smart move, right? Taking a proven title that people love elsewhere and bringing it over.
Yeah, like that's what I'm saying. Whenever you make a game, whether Now I have to literally input this as well. Shooting multiplayer game, soccer game, or sports games, racing games. Um, what's another one? RPGs, places where you explore, open world ones. Make a gimmick that will get people's attention, something that they have never seen in a while, with something fresh that you're bringing to the table, and you will see that you will bring people to the table to say, oh, like, this game has this. I've never seen this game. I've never seen a game have this gimmick before or have this stuff on it. Like, it's so interesting. I want to play it. Because if we just have the same stuff that basically almost every game has, it's likely gonna be swept under the rug like this game.
But unfortunately, what they brought over was a messy, bad game. They added
Get a soccer ball
which props
for a
them
shooting
for
game
doing
and
that.
have it
They
kick.
actually
Whenever it
contracted
kicks,
Remedy
it just
to help make the
it follows
campaign.
you and
The
kills
campaign
you.
actually had some cool ideas to it, but ultimately was still messy and weird. And multiplayer that just was not compelling. A lot of people kind of dubbed it like a bootleg Counter-Strike. And unfortunately,
No.
you can't compete with Counter-Strike. This game had bad reviews, and it seems like nobody really bothered playing it. It released February 2022, and it shut down in May of 2023. There are just too many
all these
other
games that were
first-person shooters
overhyped
out
got
there
shut down
asking for people's
later.
time and money
Oh my
and doing a
gosh.
really good job getting it. And unfortunately, Crossfire X just couldn't hack it, and it came and went real quick. It felt like a fever dream. I forgot this one even happened. Now, down at number 1, we have Babylon's Fall. This is from Platinum Games, the developers behind so many incredible games like Bayonetta, Nier Automata, Vanquish, The Wonderful 101, and unfortunately, Babylon's Fall is not one of the good ones. When Platinum misses, they really miss. And this was essentially their attempt at taking some of their combat expertise, specifically kind of with Nier Automata, and make a multiplayer thing. Make a continuous multiplayer live service thing that seemingly nobody really wanted to get on board with. It had a roadmap, it had content planned, but nobody cared. The game at its height only reached like 1,000 concurrent players, and that dropped pretty quickly. In just like a handful of months later, the player count was literally one person. Babylon's Fall definitely had more headlines
that one person
for
was probably
negative
a
reasons.
Chad
I wouldn't
saying
say
that,
this
"Oh
one
my
was
gosh, actually,
completely
I'm the last
overhyped,
one playing
but
this
it
game
did die
before it
really,
died."
really quickly. The studio is hyped for sure. When Platinum makes a game that's good, it's really good. But again, when they fail, oof, we get things like Babylon's Fall, and hopefully they don't ever have a misstep like this again. It ended up being a significant financial loss for the publisher of this one, Square Enix, and hopefully everybody learned their lesson here. Will they? I don't know. It's the gaming industry. But hey, those were 10 games we wanted to talk about today, so let us know if you have any of your own examples down in the comments.
I already gave my one example, and I'm not talking about it again because obviously I just don't want to think about it as an overhyped game that's gonna die before it literally started, because obviously it's just a pain how the whole gaming industry is just so bad, where it's like now it's starting to go into microtransactions of, well, you have the game, but you want extra stuff, well, you gotta pay. Like, you want to finish this fight with some new stuff, like, here you go, like, here's a paywall. Or how I heard from a video saying that, oh, if you want to complete the final battle for the story, you gotta pay $5 for it, like, stuff like that. Like, it's gonna have something with gimmicks, with money. And I've heard stuff about like the Suicide Squad being in the same realm. That's gonna be paying to play the game with a little bit of us just like not getting much. Like, not getting much, but we have to pay for the stuff that we want. Like, that's gonna suck. Like, please don't go in this route. Please, just don't. Like, games should be fun. Games should have gimmicks, not the same BS that I keep on seeing every single time, or having to pay $10 for a certain skin, because that is just painful. But damn, these were definitely 10 overhyped games that died the fastest. I just did not know. Damn, I was so lost. They did die the fastest because I didn't even like know about these games, except for like one out of all of them. That's crazy. Yikes.